Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Athol Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.
Hello and welcome to the Four Lads Had a Dream podcast. I am Paul Ironmonger, a new face here, and I'm joined by a more familiar face in Stevie Clifford. Hi, Stevie.
Paul, good evening, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad at all, thank you.
Good. I'm looking forward to it, mate. I'm looking forward to speaking a wee bit about the women's team this year.
Exactly. Perhaps we should be calling this the Four Lasses Had a Dream podcast for today only, because that's right. So we're talking all about women's football and specifically Rangers women, and the season just gone by, the 2025-26 season, and how it went for the women this past year. I don't know if you followed a bit the women's football team much, Stevie, now and again with this season.
Yeah, I'm up to date. Went to quite a few games last year. Like to keep a keen eye on what's going on. It's part of Rangers, so yeah. I like to think I'm quite knowledgeable. So we'll see where it takes us.
Yeah, it's you make an important point actually. It's part of Rangers. It's part of Rangers, which is, obviously I'm a follower of the men's team. I like to keep an eye on what's happening in the academy and the women's team as well. I'm a big fan of women's football, and I like to see how that's going. And as you say, it's all part of the one club, and so it's good to get involved and keep an eye on these things. I guess before we kind of delve into talking about the women's game and the women's team at Rangers, and I don't like to draw comparisons with the men's football. It's a bit unfair to do that. But if I was to ask you, Stevie, what you would like in Scotland to change in the men's game, what would you say would you like it to be? A little bit different in some way. What would the main standout things be for you? Well, apart from wanting in the men's game.
In the men's
apart
game,
from wanting Rangers to win the league every year, of course.
I'm not sure. I'd like the referees and the officials to be better. I'd like somebody to fix the offside and the handball rule.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'd like
universal.
From a personal point of view, I'd like Rangers to fix themselves and to stop being such a basket case at times. It seems like that's almost an intense and unfair word, but it just seems to be one thing after another at times. But yeah, I mean, I've not got too much complaints. Referee and officials, some of the laws of the game, but overall, I'm pretty content.
Because I was thinking about this. I was thinking about what would I like to be different, and I started to look at the women's game in Scotland and the men's game and seeing where the differences are. And one thing that stood out to me was it's a two-horse race, pretty much, apart from the season just gone past. But it's pretty much a two-horse race. Whereas the women's game's a wee bit different in Scotland. It's in the last 5 seasons, we've had 5 different winners of the league. We've had this past season, Hearts won it. Also having a pretty good season all round that club. The previous season to that, it was Hibs, and before that it was Celtic. Before that it was Glasgow City, and the Rangers won it in 21-22. So I guess that looking at the men's game and the women's game, comparing it, you've got five teams in the women's league who've won it in the last 5 seasons, and that kind of shakes things up a bit, which I think maybe in a way would be nice to see in the men's game, provided that Rangers come out on top every season, of course.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a very good point, because as we talk about this year, and the league title, Glasgow City were miles clear at one point. I think they were 12 points clear. Normally in a men's season, albeit this season is different, that would have been enough to win a team of league, and you would have just kept winning the games. But that very quickly finished. Glasgow City didn't even finish in the top two. So the strength of the league and the strength of all the teams around being able to challenge certainly makes it interesting. When you get into that top six, it really does become the proverbial, big game every single time. So it's a very valid point. Would I love to see that in the Scottish game, providing Rangers come on top? Absolutely, because it wouldn't be so that the problem of why there's such a catastrophic reaction to any bad result is because it's normally very telling. In the women's game, a bad result, it's not quite as DEFCON, 1 or DEFCON 5 to the way it is in the men's game, because you normally can't catch them. So a very interesting, very valid point, especially this season with the women.
Yeah, indeed. It'd be good in the men's game to have 5 different runners up every year. So every season. So I should say a different runner up every season would be good. Like I said, for the last 5 years, 5 different winners. Another thing that kind of struck me as well is the number of academy graduates on the women's team. The Rangers Academy, now the academy's been going for quite a few years now, and the women's academy section is really churning out youngsters for the first team. Now I know it's actually easier for girls to get into the first team. They can make their debut at 15, 16 years old and go straight into the team, because I guess that they're at such a high level that they can cope with the league. Whereas in the men's game, it's not so easy. It's not so easy. But it's a really positive thing. In recent years, we produced the likes of who was there, Kirsty McLean. She was there. Of course, she left last season, at the start of last season, just gone to go down to Liverpool. But she's now an established international. I think she's only just turned 18. I could be wrong, but I think she's 18 or 19.
I think Kirsty would be older than that. Emma Watson had just turned 18 when she had left. Kirsty, I'm just checking now. I think Kirsty's older, but I might be wrong. Born 2005, so she's just went 21.
Just on 21. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, Emma Watson. There's another one. Yeah, she ended up going to Man U from Rangers. Yeah, she's another one who came through, came through the academy, who was absolutely fantastic. And one just departed, Mia Macaulay, who played the whole season at Rangers just now, and she's just departed the club at the end of her contract, and so she's off to pastures new. No doubt. I don't have information about which club she's joining yet, but if you've heard anything.
Yeah, she's linked with Liverpool, Crystal Palace to go and join Joe down there. So she will make the move down to English football. I'm sure as this podcast goes on, we will explain that. Because a lot of people saying, why didn't we want to keep her? Why didn't we try and keep her? We tried everything to keep all 3 of the ones that we've talked about. But when a club comes in and they can pay more money than women's football the way it is, there's not really any major transfer fees. I think for Rio Hardy, who was one of our top scorers, we ended up getting like £30,000 at the start of the season, which shows you there's no money there. And for the girls, when the contract runs out, they pick them up. There's a nominal fee, couple of £1,000 development fee, and off they go. So that's what's happened to Rangers, and unfortunately will continue to happen, because the Scottish League, although the standard, there's plenty of competition, it just doesn't pay what the English game does, and that's really it. A salary of £30,000 or £40,000 per week isn't abnormal for the men, but for the women, it's £30,000, £40,000 per year. And I think that's where it's a big difference. You go for the quality, but you also go for the the finance and the stability of your family. And you just need to look at the amount of players Rangers have lost down south. Start the season, Kirsty Howitt, Olivia McLaughlin, Rio Hardy, Kirsty McLean, to name just a few. So yeah, it's extremely difficult to try and make that sustainable for Rangers. But that's one of the challenges they face. You bring in, and they brought in a lot of youngsters, Lily Boyce, May Croft this year, making their debuts at 15, 16. The problem Rangers have got is once they come to 18 and signing that contract, most likely they won't sign that contract. And again, they'll be poached and go down south, which is extremely difficult.
Yeah, this is the big problem. The Women's Super League in England, of course, it's exploded in the last few years. It's the money comparatively with with other leagues, even around Europe, the money going into that league has been huge. I think it's because they're basically getting money from the men's league and from the money the riches that they have there to help the growth of the women's game in England. And it's similar to a young lad in Scotland who breaks into the first team, gets wooed by the riches of English clubs. It's the same with the girls too. They're like you said, they're breaking into the first team, and they want to go where they can get noticed, make a good living, try and push their career on from there. I guess it's no wonder, but it's just frustrating that the academy is producing these good players, giving them a platform, and eventually losing them. But you can't blame them. But on the other hand, it's a shame they just don't stick around for maybe a little bit longer. It would be nice. As I said, the transfer market is different than the men's, isn't it? Because we're not getting transfer fees for players, as you mentioned, and so it makes things difficult. It makes things difficult for the women's team.
Yeah, I think as well what you've seen, Paul, is that, and this is worth noting, the Rangers team from this time last year has been completely decimated because Rangers have cut their budget. Hearts have cut their budget. Hibs have cut their budget. Celtic have massively cut their budget. Glasgow City have cut their budget. I think there was a boom a couple of years ago to make the women's game really big here. But I think clubs have also financially looked at it and thought this isn't viable. As much as they need to have it for European football, and I think there's some benefits towards the financial fair play stuff, but they're not the same as they were a couple of years ago. So it's not a tax write-off as such anymore. And I think that's where a lot of people are saying that it's simply not viable anymore. And owners are pulling the resources. You've just seen the Hearts manager leave. And she said that we can't continue to cut budgets. Our own assistant manager, Andy Thompson, took that job. Celtic, when she left, she said the same thing about budgets. And it's just slowly, progressively throughout. I think Glasgow City are the highest funded because they've got the big sponsorship deal. But aside of that, Rangers have really cut back. I believe that Rangers used to spend, 2-3 million a year on the women's game, and it's now less than a third of it. So, yeah, there's that financial disparity is massive, and because the clubs have scaled back, it's only becoming even bigger. When you look at that. So that's why, and people aren't going to like this, when we talk about Rangers and we're going to talk about Rangers women's season, Rangers finishing second, qualifying for the Champions League, Rangers getting to 2 cup finals, given what's happened to their squad, being ripped apart as it was, it's not a bad season. And that's where it becomes difficult because we expect to win absolutely everything, and everybody was panning Leanne Crichton. The reality of it is, with such a young squad and the changes that she had to make and the amount of loan signings and things, Leanne Crichton done a good job to finish second and to take it to the last day. Unfortunately for Rangers, 2 cup final defeats and a last day defeat where a victory would have won them the league means that everybody's going to stick in and criticise them. But as I've just demonstrated, financially, it's massively different, and Rangers' budget compared to your others in that top 5 bracket isn't that bigger or isn't that much different to what they're doing also.
Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. For any Rangers fan, looking at any Rangers team, whether it's the under 12s or whether it's the men's senior team, the women's senior team, whatever, we expect them to win. We demand that they win. We demand that they win everything, every cup, every league. Of course, it's not realistic to do that all the time, but it's the demands that are at the club. And so, on looking at taking it at face value, looking at the season, as you said, finishing second in the league and being in the final of both cups, but we come out with nothing at the end, and that to the Rangers fans is a bad season. But as you say, having to basically start from scratch at the start of the season, with a severely limited budget, it's actually not bad. It's pretty good season. If you look at it in detail. You also mentioned about the Hearts manager, head coach, Eva Olid, who just recently left after, I don't know how many years was it. Could have been 5 years at Hearts. I don't remember how many years she's been at Hearts, but she's several years at Hearts. Interestingly, out of the 10 managers, head coaches in the women's Premier League, she was the only non-Scottish manager this season. All the others are Scottish, which is quite interesting as well.
Celtic ended with a Scottish manager, but she was, because they took him from the boy Craig from Hibs, and but she was foreign. The girl that was in charge.
Yes, I think she's Swedish. Yeah, Swedish was the kind of an Albanian surname or something, but I think she's Swedish. Yeah. She started the season and ended up the lad from Hibs. Also, the league kind of changed for the season. It went from 12 teams to 10, so reducing the number of teams in the top flight, I guess, to try and sort of up the level, to prevent the quite a big sort of disparity between the top teams and the bottom. Although this season, Rangers still managed to record 2 11-0 victories against the same club. I think it was against Montrose? I think it was.
Montrose,
yeah.
I believe Montrose.
And so it was 2 11-0 victories. So there's one game I was at a couple of seasons ago, was the opening game against a team called Glasgow Girls and Women, and it was a 13-0 home win in the first game of the season. So yeah, you still do tend to get these high scoring games and high scoring for one team, but yeah, in an attempt to try and bring the level a bit closer, they reduce it to 10 teams. Everyone playing everybody home and away, and then a split going 6 and 4. So the top 6 play and the bottom 4 play home and away games as well, which leaves the top 6 teams playing 28 games in the season. And yeah, so that was the structural change for this going into this season. And as you touched on, the Rangers' new head coach at the start of the season, Leanne Crichton, who's known to a lot of people in Scotland, I would say, not only because she was a player with 72 caps, but she's also well known from television and radio. And I think she just recently, in the last year or so, she completed her UEFA Pro license and was assistant at Glasgow City before moving to Rangers at the start of this season. I was a wee bit surprised at the appointment, actually. I think that although she has lots of experience as a player and as a coach, she was player coach at Motherwell, before moving to Glasgow City as the assistant there. Still came as a bit of a surprise to appoint her. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I was slightly surprised, but she has the credentials. I don't think there was a massive candidate list. So I'm not sure anybody was kind of outstanding, but she came in late, which didn't help her. By the time she came in, I mean, if you look at that team last year, they lost Essen, Middag, Jane Ross, Kirsty Howitt, Rio Hardy. And then in midfield, they lost Kirsty McLean, Chelsea Cornett, Liv McLaughlin, who are their 3 starters, with Tess coming in to back them up. All of them are gone.
These are international players.
Yeah.
Vicky these are represented their countries.
Vicky S in New Zealand international as well in goals. So they lost so much out of that team, and she came in, and it was kind of pieced together with loan players and young players coming through. And for her to do as well, she had a couple of really big results through the season. They managed to be unbeaten against Celtic right up until the Scottish Cup final. And she did take them to the last game of the season, which I think she deserves a massive amount of credit for. So I just think the issue is that, for Leanne, she's fighting against. She's already this season. At the end of the season, she's now lost Mia McCauley. She's now lost Leah Eddy, both walking away from their contracts on a free. She's managed to keep Nick Dock. She's managed to keep Kathy Hill. She's managed to keep Katie Wilkinson, which is huge, and Laura Rafferty. So that's fine. But, Rangers already, they've lost a lot of players, and they will have lost the loan players as well coming in. And I just think, this is where it becomes problematic. How is she supposed to build on what she's already done last season? So with them getting to so many kind of finals and things like that, you want them then to go on and build, but she can't possibly go on and build when the whole team is getting ripped apart again. So that's it. Listen, I think Leanne Crichton, and people will look at this and say, there's no way Rangers should get to a final game of the season where they could possibly win the league and promptly get beat 6-0 and lose it. I get that. And they will say that nobody should be in a final and lose it to Glasgow City or to Celtic. And again, I get that. But I think there needs to be a wee bit of realism. In our midfield, May Croft just turned 16. I think she's an England under-19 international. We have to play her. Lily Boyce at the back and in midfield. Ailey Austin, Laura Berry. These are all youngsters that are kind of brought through the Rangers team. And I think this is going to be controversial, but as much as it is controversial, Leanne Crichton didn't get everything right tactically and formation and some of the performances. But she also had to deal with a squad that vastly during games underperformed massively. Mia McCauley, as much as everybody's looking at it saying what a loss she'll be, she didn't have a good season. And she could, the levels that she got herself to before, she never managed to repeat. Numbers throughout the squad were down, obviously, because they lost the firepower of Hardy, Howitt and Ross. And that midfield had been decimated. So I think there needs to be a little bit of understanding on what Leanne Crichton had to deal with this year and what she managed to achieve.
Yeah, I mean, looking at, as you said, the team was basically patched together with loan players, not too dissimilar to what happened at with the men's team this season. Having to bring in loan players, which you can't build a team. You can't build a team with loan players, but that's what they're there for, to bring in to try and give you a meaningful starting 11 at least. And this was the problem that Leanne faced, where she had to deal with this and to try and get some sort of team, and then try and get a formation based around this team that you've had to build very quickly. Looking at the players who now are sort of staying on, Kathy Hill having signed an extension to her contract. These are, also as you mentioned, Nick Dock as well, and Rafferty. I mean, these are players that are sort of in the twilight of their careers now. I mean, Rangers is obviously Rangers fans, and they love Rangers, and they wouldn't want to be anywhere else. But there are sort of, like they say, they're in the twilight of their careers now, and it's again, it's going to be difficult to build a team around them because they're not going to be here for the long term.
But they still they have the experience, though, Paul. So when
exactly,
I think from my point of view, you look at Lizzie Arnott's now gone; she's retired.
Yes.
Mia McCauley's gone. We've lost Camille Lefay as well. So Cammie's gone into her contract. Lee Menguin, Quinty Sabojo have both left. And they were both free agents, and anyone that had seen them, no disrespect, would probably realise that they were just kind of patchwork to the squad. Sophia Kelly, Jess Pegram, Kim Shiji, who was a star, had all gone.
She's gone back to Roma.
Leah Eddy going today.
That's a bad one. That's a bad one, losing her.
Yeah, but it gets to the point where, as a squad, you've got to look at it and say that re-signing Doc, Laura Rafferty, Katie Wilkinson, and Cathy Hill was more or less a necessity because they will have no squad and they will have no first team if that wasn't done. I think the women's numbers, you'd be lucky if their first team squad at this moment in time is sitting at around 14, given how much they've lost. And that, to me, is, maybe you would wanted to move certain players on, or you maybe would have wanted to integrate them out of the team and play others. But like Cathy, we sponsored Cathy last year. I'm really close to Cathy. She played through and has been playing through injuries for a number of years now. And it's just so thin on numbers. And as we talked about financially, I don't see how Rangers change that. And I think that when people look in and they say, just bin the women's team, having a women's team is an absolute necessity of European qualification and things like that. And Champions League progression for Rangers this year, and the women's side finishing second, means that they will financially bring in more money than they would have won for, or they would have got for winning the Scottish League. And it just shows you how vital it all is. It's crazy. And I know you can go back to the results. I mean, Leanne Crichton went beating Celtic 4-0 at home, a couple of games left, to then losing the Scottish Cup final 1-0 to them against 10 players. And it's extremely difficult to justify that and say, well, she's done really well when that happens. But Leanne Crichton can only do so much once you cross the white line. I mean, I've seen Katie Wilkinson score for fun, and then in the big games towards the end of the season, last game of the season and stuff, we just couldn't get her on the ball. We couldn't get a touch. So there's a lot to unpack. I think the context is vital. When we talk about Leanne Crichton, when we talk about Rangers, when we talk about the squad, talk about the season, how it looks, how it's went. Sadly, I think next season is going to be even more difficult for the club to do anything women game wise, because the amount of players and quality we've lost is unsustainable.
Yeah, it also come back around to the fact that academy graduates can get a look in because of the numbers, as you're saying, if there is indeed about 14, 15 players in the first team squad at the moment, having lost several, it does give academy graduates, a bit of a hope. These girls who are 15, 16 years old, thinking, that there could be a place for me in the team, which is positive. But it's positive only because we don't have the players or the finances to bring in the players that they can do south of the border. Katie Wilkinson, she's looking back at the season, she's had a decent season, highest top scorer in the league, 27 league goals, 2 hat-tricks, including a hat-trick against Celtic in April, which is always nice, of course. She's the previous season as well. I think she scored, I think it was 39 goals in something like 35 games, 32 games, I think, something along those lines. So she's a really prolific scorer, but no, she's 31. Again, she's not going to be here for the long term. But as you touched on, we need these players with experience, because if we're going to drop in academy players into the squad, then these players are essential. The likes of Cathy Hill, Nick Dock, and Katie Wilkinson. We need them around. It's basically the spine of the team.
Yeah,
and we
certainly
need these people. We need these people. Mm-hmm.
Certainly it's been in the squad, Paul. Sorry, I just checked there. Had a quick look. There's 14 first-team players left, and that includes the likes of the youngsters, Black and stuff. So, I mean, that's difficult when you look at the level of internationals. I mean, when you talk about Liv McLaughlin, Chelsea Cornett, Kirsty McLean, Rio Hardy, Kirsty Howitt, Tess Medag, Vic Essen, as you said, all of them are internationals. Mia Macaulay, Scottish international. Leah Eddy, Scottish international. Camille Lefay, I think she's American, Canadian international as well. So
yeah, I think she's
one of the two. So they've all walked out of this club, and I don't mean that sounding disparaging. I just mean that the quality that we've got leaving us and being able to depart is irreplaceable. You're talking about having to get young kids on loan and things, and it's just when you look at context, and that's all I would ask people to do when you talk about the women's game and the women's season and where Rangers women are going into next season. People are going to look at it, and they're going to look at it, and maybe Rangers on this squad, Rangers would take a few heavy defeats next season, the way that they did on the last game of the season at Glasgow City, and that's just unfortunately the truth of it. Now, what we do in the summer, Donald Gillies is constantly fighting, I believe, one hand tied behind his back because the budget just gets chop, 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 chop. That's the nature of the job. And until Rangers men start winning and start qualifying for Champions League and that money starts filtering through the club, this situation isn't going to change. A lot of people are just going to look at it and say, bin it, get rid of it. Why are we even doing it? It's not possible to do that. So the expectations of the women's game and the women's team next season, Paul, I'll be absolutely honest with you, I don't have any. I really don't. It's going to be interesting to see what business they do because they're going to have to do a lot of good business. That squad at the moment looks extremely fragile from front to back. And how you fix that, you need, numbers-wise, for a season like we have, including Europe and things like that, numbers-wise, you probably need in the region of 6 to 8 players.
Yeah, and I think that
is difficult.
Yeah, I think the positive thing is that everybody else is in the same boat. Celtic having a worse season than Rangers. I mean, to say Rangers didn't have a bad season. I should reiterate that, but Celtic, a big Scottish club, also struggling. Hearts, I think they're going to suffer problems as well. As you said, Everett Olid left, saying that it doesn't look good. The forecast isn't good. Glasgow City as well, and it's really difficult for them. They're a women-only club, so they don't have a men's section to sort of try and pull resources from, or try and get something from at all. So they, although they manage extremely well. So yeah, there's lots of clubs in the women's league in Scotland going to have the same problems that Rangers has, to perhaps to a greater degree in some cases. But the thing is, with the women's game, and it's the same the world over. The relative cost of getting success is not a lot. If you think of the money in the men's game and some of the money on transfers and salaries, it's absolutely crazy when you think that a fraction of that money could really raise the women's team up to a very high level on a fraction of the money. And I guess it comes down to the financial viability of it. There isn't as much interest. There isn't not as many merchandise sales, not as many people going to the games, sponsorship, etc. But it's true that just a fraction of that money, in comparison to the men's game, is just it wouldn't take an awful lot to really raise the level.
No,
and start battling in Europe. Trying to achieve something in Europe.
I think the problem that Rangers have got is that Rangers have flung everything at this. and it's just not popular, Paul. They've even moved games to Ibrox, big games, made them Friday night kickoffs, made entry a couple of £1, and you still get 1,000 people turning up at most. It's just not sustainable for the football club. So I'm not sure what else Rangers can do to try and make this appealing. Or do we get to the point where we simply just say, no offence to anyone, that this isn't viable anymore? I think the club are at that decision level where do they just accept that success at this level means not a lot to the support, or is it a case of persevering, trying to make it successful? Because if and when the men's first team finally do become successful, that feel-good factor peters down. I'm not sure, but as a club, I think we're at what happens to Rangers women's football team next season and the level of investment in the summer and stuff like that is going to be extremely interesting. I think that'll give you a greater sense of where we are.
Yeah, I think with the new owners, we can afford to be a little bit optimistic. I don't know what their plans are for the women's team. At the moment, it doesn't look perhaps that promising, but I think we can afford to be a little bit optimistic. And they come from a country which is at the forefront of women's football, because the USA heavily invest in the women's football, because what happens there is the money for all sport is divided between men and women, and in the men's sport, the American football takes up a big chunk of that, and the women's sport, American football, doesn't. So it goes to soccer, and that's why the US Women's League and the US are really quite successful with that. And so these people, these owners at Rangers are not strangers to the success of women's football, I'm sure. It's just whether or not they decide to go in that direction with Rangers. Perhaps when Rangers start getting into Europe, the men's team that is, perhaps we'll see a bit of an uplift in this, a bit more of a feel-good factor and more interest in the women's game. Let's hope so. But yeah, I guess we have to just hope that this season can somehow be successful for Rangers, and the women's team can start winning trophies again. Like you said before, second in the league, took it to the last game of the season. The League Cup final ended in a 2-1 defeat against Glasgow City, and it was actually Lisa Forrest was the scorer for Glasgow City. It's the sister of James and Alan Forrest, who we know. And in the Scottish Cup final, Rangers women losing against Celtic 1-0, who were down to 10 players for the majority of the game. I just hope that this coming season can be more successful, and maybe getting a trophy will perhaps bring some supporters in, because as we said at the beginning, we're one club, and all these different sections of the club count towards this one club. There's lots of women and girls go to watch the men's team in the stadium, so perhaps we can transfer some of this to the women's team.
Yeah, we just need to hope. I am not negative about it all. I'm more trying to be realistic about the context of what we've seen and where it's going. But let's certainly hope for a summer uplift, positivity going into the next season. Let's see what the team can do. It will need a lot of signings and a lot of kind of feel-good factor for the team to be moving forward. But it's like the men's team. Both go hand in hand, and it all peters down and filters down. And we'll just need to hope for that. But it's been a good discussion, Paul. I'm really interested.
Success. This is what we want. So
it'll be interesting to see what the viewers think, and hopefully there's plenty of comments on it.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll leave it there for today, and I'll certainly be keeping a close eye on fortunes of the women's team over the summer, with perhaps making a few transfers, like you said. Keeping my fingers crossed for that. And with a World Cup next year, there could be plenty of players wanting to get more minutes. So perhaps that's optimistic for making some good positive transfers and getting somewhere. So thanks very much for your attention and watching this podcast on the women's game, and I hope to see some people at the women's fixtures in the coming season.
The Four Lads podcast is sponsored by Rhino Express, Clydeview Joinery, Arfield Industrial Solutions Limited, and CSD Air Conditioning, in partnership with Black Rooster and Art of Gold. Thank you for listening to or watching the podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show.